Well, good morning. This is the week when the firearm deer season gets underway in Michigan. It may not have the mass appeal it once had, but November 15 is still a very special day on the calendar for many. Good luck to all of those who will be out chasing the elusive whitetail. But our conversation this morning is not about deer season, but about Father's Day 2018. If that hint piques your curiosity, stay with us, because the conversation starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, in case you don't remember, Father's Day weekend in 2018 brought heavy rain to much of upper Michigan. In Houghton County, the National Weather Service referred to the storm as a 1,000-year rain event, as it dumped over 7 inches in a 3-hour period. The devastation was widespread throughout the county, and the damage to streets and roads was more than $70 million. This morning we're going to talk with a person responsible for leading the effort to repair a major part of that damage. Kevin Haryu is the engineer for the Houghton County Road Commission. He's our guest this morning. Kevin, welcome to the Ryan Report.
Hi.
Nice to have you with us.
Thanks for
A
having
little background about you, first of all. I think you are a Copper Country native?
Yeah, I've lived my entire life up in the Copper Country. Went to Michigan Tech to school and worked for a consultant firm for over 10 years and then moved over to the Road Commission.
And have you been the guy in charge since you joined, or did you start with a different job?
I was the assistant engineer when I first was hired with the Road Commission. Since 2005, I've been the county highway engineer.
Okay. And just so people understand the way it works in Michigan, the County Road Commission is a separate unit of government by its own.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that we're a separate legal entity from county government. That is supposed to help as best as possible to take essentially the politics out of road repair.
Okay, but you'd have to kind of work with the county and get along with them, right?
Correct. We interact with the county a lot.
Okay. And the engineer is really the chief administrative officer of the county staff, the county road commission staff.
Correct. You're the manager of the Road Commission and the position I'm in.
Okay. So take me back to Father's Day weekend. When did you begin to realize this was more than just a regular rain event?
Well, it was kind of weird. My wife and I live out in the Butchak area, and all of a sudden we had a tremendous lightning storm. And my wife likes watching it, so we got up and watched the lightning storm. And I said, well, we've got to get up in the morning tomorrow, so better go back to bed. Well, it was so bright, my head barely hit the pillow, and all of a sudden the phone started ringing. And it was, from that point, everyone was called out, and the roads were just tremendously flooded, and it was amazing. It was something that you never would have thought was occurring.
How long did it take to really see how extensive the damage was? I'm sure you couldn't do that instantly.
Well, there's a lot of roads that I knew would be closed, just that were prone to flooding, to get to my office even. So I took higher roads, and those were also flooded. So I knew it wasn't going to be good. Of course, it was extremely dark when the storm originally hit.
Right.
So once the sun started coming up and we were able to see some of the damage, it was, almost everyone was in disbelief. It was incredible to see.
And of course, when you have a normal event, you can send crews out and probably at least make some temporary fixes, but that was not necessarily the case here, was it?
No, it wasn't. We reached out right away to not only all of our staff, but a lot of the local contractors that we knew had equipment that was capable of doing some of the repairs. And we did start as fast as we could on making the repairs. Another thing I realized, and I didn't realize how many people in Houghton County own their own tractors.
Really?
Because a lot of the residents were even out, trying to get their neighbor out of their driveways and so
Sure.
forth. So.
Yeah, it was a real community effort in a sense.
Yeah, I was very impressive on how the community came together, be it the government agencies, the contractors, adjacent government entities. We had even road commissions from Lower Michigan calling to help to assist us. And then, of course, our adjacent road commissions also helped us.
And the damages really were extensive, weren't they? Put a price tag on that for us.
As a Houghton County Road Commission, we'll be approaching $40 million. There's over $70 million just on local road systems. That's not including MDOT. That's not including the damage to the trail system on the DNR. So in excess of $70 million of damage we experienced.
So Governor Snyder declared a disaster. What has that meant now as you begin to try to put the pieces together again?
So we get to work with two different agencies once that declaration was made. On our federal aid routes, which would be our primary routes, our higher traffic routes, we work with federal highways. And then on our local roads, we work with FEMA to get those repairs done through grants.
This is not an easy process, is it?
No, it's very difficult and time consuming. We're still recovering up to date. Here we are over a year and a half past the flood. We have about, on the road commission system, we have about $20 million repaired of the $40 million worth of damage.
And are you seeing some of that federal money yet?
Yeah, it turns into a little bit of a cash flow problem because we have to pay up front for a lot of the road repairs and then get reimbursed after they're paid. So for example, on our FEMA system, on our local system, we did this summer over $5.5 million worth of repair work, and to date we received $1.5 million in reimbursement.
And I know one of the big issues for you and probably other agencies in Houghton County is that local match, which is pretty extensive, isn't it?
Yeah, on the FEMA side, the governor approved that the state would pay the 25% match, which was great to hear. We're still working with our legislators on the federal highway system, requires a 20% match. We have $22.5 million worth of damage on our federal highway system, which requires a $4.5 million match, which we only have an annual budget of $5 to $6 million, so we just don't have the $4.5 million. So we took a SIB loan out, so we have some cash to work with, but of course it's like any loan, it needs to be repaid.
So you're still waiting for some additional funding to come from the state?
Correct. We've been working with all of our legislators to try to get that done. We have meetings planned here in the future, but currently with what's going on in Lansing now with the budget, they're kind of at a standstill point at this point.
So when it comes to getting this work done, I assume your crews can do some of it, but much of it has to be contracted out?
Yeah, so we're trying to orchestrate it so our crews can do as much as they can, and we've contracted a lot of it out to keep it moving. Like I said, when we contract it out, of course, we have to have the cash to pay those contractors, which becomes an issue. And another issue we have is when our employees are working to do repairs, maintenance gets neglected on, say,
Other projects? Yeah.
Grading gravel roads and that. So a majority of the public's been very patient and understanding on that, but it is trying because it takes a long time to go through the process.
And I'm sure you wouldn't wish this on your worst enemy.
No, I wouldn't. It's been an experience, and I'm glad to have being a part of trying to get to the end result of the repair. But it is a trying on everyone, on our staff and our employees, and even our contractors are put to the test.
Okay, we'll talk about some other subjects in just a minute. Back with more on today's show after we take this 2-minute break. Again, we're talking this morning with Kevin Haryu, who is the engineer or manager of the Houghton County Road Commission. Before we leave the subject of the floods, the key point is you're still working on these things with the state, and that's pretty important, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a long process to get the funds, and we're still uncertain on how the match funds, the $4.5 million that the Road Commission needs, where that's going to come from. But we've been meeting and going to Lansing and having some legislators come up into our area also to discuss that further.
Okay. Let's talk about winter. We've only had a little taste of it, but are you ready for another winter at the Houghton County Road Commission?
I don't know if you ever can say you're truly ready for a winter. You try the best you can. We convert all of our sander trucks. We use to haul material to do repairs during the summer. So we watch the forecasts extensively to see when we should start putting underblades and wings and the sanders back in those trucks. We're close to ready, I would say. I mean, this is the normal date usually we're looking for.
Right.
So we're ready to go, but you're never 100% ready.
You mentioned forecast, and I wondered, with the changes in weather forecasting technology, does that help you?
Yeah, it's nice now, especially with everyone has smartphones now, so we're able to, regardless where we are in the field, we can look up and see the radar or look at the forecast, and it's used quite often just to see where the heavy snowfalls are occurring.
It has to be really challenging to prepare for winter when you're in probably one of the snowiest counties in the whole Midwest.
Yeah, we get a lot of snow. People, if you get a snowstorm in, say, Lower Michigan, if you get to 6 inches of snow, everything shuts down.
Yeah.
That for the Houghton County, that's the norm for the public, and The people there are they're used to it, and they know that the plows are in certain areas in the morning and other areas in the afternoon. So,
how many miles of road do you have to deal with as the Houghton County Road Commission?
850 miles.
Okay, I know you don't do the cities, so this would be the county roads, the
They're outside
township roads.
Yeah, that are outside of the city limits.
Okay.
There's 7 cities and villages in Houghton County, and we take care of the rest.
How do you set your priorities on what roads get plowed first?
Our heavy traffic routes are the first that we try to plow, and we also work with the schools for bus routes, so we can help them get out to school and to get back. Our superintendents and foremen play a crucial role in that because they actually come out long before the 5:30 start time just to look where there's bad drifting.
Okay.
So I mean, they really have an early day. I mean, they'll start sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning.
How do counties in Michigan get funding to do this kind of work?
The main funding is through Act 51 through the gas tax. But in Houghton County, we also have a 1.3 mil tax that's levied. But a lot of people don't understand that Houghton County road millage is shared amongst the road commission and the cities and villages. So we get about 63% of that. So it generates about $800,000 to $900,000 a year for the road commission.
Do you have the wing plows in your fleet? That's kind of the newest thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not so new, but I mean fairly new.
Yeah, we've had wings for a long time.
Okay.
We always chuckle when we hear downstate, they've came up with a new invention, a wing. I was thinking that as long as I can remember up here, even as a kid, I could remember seeing wings on plows. But yes, we do have wings on all of our plows to not only help clear the lanes faster, but it helps knock the banks back more so that you have less drifting.
Are there some things the public can do to make it safer for the snowplow driver and for the public?
There's several things. I mean, give the plows a lot of space when they're plowing. And another thing is, don't plow across the road where you leave a dimple sticking out in the road, because when that freezes, if our plow is driving down the road and hits it, it will cause them to spin out. And if a car's coming the other way, it wouldn't be a good situation.
I know they've been experimenting with some new substances to melt ice. Have you used some of those in Houghton County?
We don't have too much of de-icer. We do use salt, but very limited. The primary use we use for salt is to mix it with the sand. We use over 10,000 yards of sand a year.
Okay.
And we mix about 3 to 5% salt in that to make the sand adhere to the ice or the snow. We'll only salt in extreme situations on the county road system.
Well, I'm hoping we have a good winter and it's not too strenuous on any of us.
I'm hoping that too.
We'll see what happens. I'll have some other questions for you in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on today's show just 2 minutes from now. Again, this morning our guest is Kevin Haryu from the Houghton County Road Commission. There's a great debate going on in Lansing about the need for Michigan to fix the roads. What are your thoughts on that?
There's definitely a need. We have about 350 miles of paved roads in Houghton County of the 850 miles. The average lifespan of a paved road is about 25 years. So we should be paving 12 to 15 miles of paved roads a year to maintain that system. Currently, we're doing about 2.5 to 3 miles. So the roads are deteriorating. Unfortunately, we have actually had to turn some paved roads back to gravel. It's not a real well-received thing to do, but when a road gets in such disrepair that it can no longer be fixed, that's the safest alternative, is to turn it back to gravel so we can grade it.
I know, looking at your website for the Houghton County Road Commission, you kind of have a 5-year plan. Does that work out well?
That works well. And that 5-year plan is for our federal highway system and our federal aid routes. We receive about $600,000 a year through the federal gas tax to repair roads. And that 5-year plan is a requirement to that grant program.
Okay. Do you plan on the county roads as well, or the township roads, working with the township?
Yeah, the local road systems, we work with each individual township. There's 14 townships in Houghton County. About a little over half of them have their own road millages. So they'll come to us and we'll provide estimates to them and recommendations on which roads we would advise to fix prior to others. And the townships are a great help on trying to repair those local roads. The townships that have a road millage, you can really tell which township you're in.
Right. So the governor proposed a 45% or 45-cent increase in the cost of gasoline, a tax on gasoline. That did not meet with much approval in the legislature, with any approval really. But I think there was also something in her plan that might have affected how much money came to the UP. Are you familiar with that?
There's always been talk about modifying the formula itself to take more of the money and move it to the urban areas. The system currently is based on mileage and population and vehicle registration, which I think is good, but there's also other pieces of that formula, say snow funds, that assist us. We receive the most snow funds in the state, about $800,000 a year. So I think all that needs to be taken into account. I mean, even if you live in a high urban area in Lower Michigan, you still want to visit the UP because we have such a great environment to visit. You know, even if it's just vacationing or maybe a summer or winter home. So you need that network. So just because a lot of the revenues are generated in an urban area, you need to move that around because the urban area needs to have people come in and out to the rural areas.
Is the present system fairly equitable as far as how those funds are distributed?
I believe it is. I think there needs to be additional funds. There's been a lot of discussion if additional funds come in, maybe you can address some of the urban areas at that time, but you have to keep the rural areas whole because otherwise they couldn't complete their jobs. I mean, there would be definitely a decline in how they do their maintenance.
What happens when you get in a really desperate situation, like a bridge, for example? You can only wait so long to repair those, right?
Right. There is it used to be called a critical bridge fund. It's a local bridge program. Every 2 years we rate our bridges and they're inspected thoroughly, so we keep a real close eye on those. And if there looks like one needs to be replaced, it goes into a group, like a grant process. It's competitive, and we try to secure funding through that. And if we do get a bridge, we have a bridge next year actually on Superior Road over the Paradise River. It's funded between state and federal level at 95% and then 5% from the local government, which would be the road commission.
Do you have an association of road commissions that tries to deal with the legislature and the governor on these issues?
Yeah, it's the County Road Association, works daily with down in Lansing. Their office is right in Lansing. Majority of all the road commissions, and there are DPWs now in the state, are members of that association. They're very informative to us, and they kind of keep the day-to-day business of what's happening down at the Capitol, to all the membership, so we know what's going on, and if we need to call our legislators, so it's very beneficial.
Hopefully all goes well with the funding for the road repairs, and you have a good winter. Thanks for coming in this morning and sharing with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'll have a closing thought for you in just a couple of minutes. Well, last week I shared the memory that as a young kid, I dreamed about being a radio announcer and got my first job at WJPD when I was a sophomore in high school. It was the start of a career in broadcasting that I've been in and out of for my whole life. Today, a few more memories from my radio days. And I moved from WJPD to WDMJ in Marquette, and after a very short stint there, was offered a job at a brand new station that was opening in Ishpeming. It would come on the air as a top 40 station that was licensed to operate at 5,000 watts, which would make it the most powerful station in the region. The station would have a whole new sound, and it had great call letters. WJAN would be Jan Radio. I was hooked. For a guy who loved the business, it was just too hard to pass up the opportunity to be part of a small group that would bring a whole new radio sound to Upper Michigan. But the owner had problems right from the beginning. He ran into delays and was running up expenses, including my salary, with nothing to show for it. Just when it seemed we were set to go on the air, the engineers realized the electric power available at the site would not run the transmitter. For the owner, it was panic time. It would take weeks for the power company to run the line that was necessary to bring three-phase power to the site. At that point, he decided to rent a portable generator to power the transmitter. Let me tell you what that meant for me. As the morning announcer, it was my job to get the station signed on at 6 a.m. But working off a generator added some new complications because every morning I would drive my car adjacent to the generating unit, which was about the size of a small truck. Then I had to run battery jumper cables between my car and the unit so my car could provide the power to get the generator started. The starter engine ran on gasoline, and when it was running, you pushed and pulled a couple of levers to shift it over to diesel fuel. As you made the switch over, fine black mist came out of the upward pointing exhaust pipe, and some of it invariably showered down on me. It didn't really put me in a great frame of mind to be the happy sign-on morning announcer. It was a great relief when the power company was able to bring the power in through their system. Eventually, the startup problems were behind us, and we were off and running with a great sound and large audience, but unfortunately, the station wasn't doing well financially. Advertising sales were not what the owner hoped they would be. So he decided to put on some stage shows at the Ishpeming Theater to bring in revenue. The timing on the show was incredible. The talent was singer Bobby Rydell, who was just hitting the big time. He would eventually score dozens of hit songs and later did some acting on television and in the movies. But he came to Ishpeming just as his career was starting to take off. He was a teen idol, and the packed house at the Ishpeming Theater loved it, with teenage girls in the audience going absolutely crazy. Before his performance, Rydell came to the radio station so he could practice lip-syncing a song, because from here, he was heading for an appearance on Dick Clark's American Bandstand. And I can still picture him in our little studio practicing his song. Hard to believe where his career went from here. You know, the stories from my early days in radio could probably fill a book. They weren't all happy stories, but they put me on the path to a career I loved. Back in a minute. Before we wrap it up for another week, I want to remind you that you can also see this report on UpperMichiganSource.com. It's live streamed during the day on Sunday, and a replay can be seen under the Ryan Report banner starting on Monday afternoon. Thanks to Kevin Haryu for joining us to provide some insights into the challenges Houghton County has faced as a result of the 2018 Father's Day flooding. And thank you for tuning in. Hope you'll plan to join us again next Sunday morning.